Okay, so another video. This one is about the boilerplate, so really the end product of the framework. Um, this is not available on GitHub or npm yet, as I'm still gluing everything together and improving stuff, and yeah. But I felt like just giving you guys a preview so I'd get some early input on this thing. So it uses a module called front-end framework, which is really the glue between all the modules I've shown you. And yeah, so that's really the only dependency it has. And then jQuery and Lodash. Right. So let's take a look at the setup. So we're gonna take a look at SRC. We don't really have to touch any of the config files. Like they're set up alright by default. Obviously you can change stuff, but you don't have to. Right. So let's take a look at the SRC directory. This setup, these folders are there by default. This one can go, actually. Let's add a styles directory or style. I forgot what I called it. I think there's less in here as well. Not yet. Okay, well, doesn't matter. Anyway, the setup. So assets will be copied to your build there. Right now I only have an index, but images, style sheet files, stuff like that will be put in here. Then there's JavaScript, which obviously contains the JavaScript. So the implementation of the framework, of the modules rather, I've been showing you guys. So there's controllers from views, from the router rather, models from the front-end model thing, policies from the router, requests from communicator. Services is just an object. It's just there to have some place to put logic you want to be able to reuse. Static views I might have not discussed yet, but it's part of the front-end view module, and then view also. So, right, components contains right now just adapters, because I didn't really feel like, I don't feel like it's part of the API, because it doesn't really have to do with the actual implementation, I guess. So, but this is part of the communicator spec. And then there's config for various things. There is a default connection for the communicator, for example. I made a translator module, so this is for the translator. Then Bootstrap gets run just before the application starts, so everything's ready, but the router hasn't been started yet. So you can execute some logic like checking whether the user is logged in on the server and setting it to the local session. This is connections from the communicator module. Model defaults for the front-end module. Right, router config. Now default route is not implemented yet. Push state is. This is for the router module, obviously. Routes also. Note that it's extended. The functionality of the front-end router module has been extended by the front-end framework. This is part of the glue. So it's right. What's happening here in the front-end framework is it's gluing the route to the view and the model, the router view and model module. It glues them together. Static views, well, this is just config for them, but static views are just views that can be on more pages, so a menu bar, for example. And what's special about them is that they get kind of rendered but hidden again when constructed, and they are put on view.staticViews. Right. And this can all go. This is old. So, but that would be default view config. There's translations here. And another cool thing is env. I think you can build the framework into modes like dev and prod, and you can have some different config or stuff, API, whatever, anything, any part of the implementation can be overridden for prod or dev. So this gets merged deeply, so you could just, if you want one variable of some very deep object to be overridden, that's possible. You just specify just the path to that one, like router dot whatever this thing slash right, and now we could just override the controller, like this would just override the controller. Okay, so that's pretty cool. There's a mobile directory as well. This will contain the same type of files, or these can be folders as well. As a dev and prod, but it will be for when the user is visiting the application on a mobile platform, so you can have different routes or different views for mobile. Right, what I meant with these can be directories is I can have a directory dev here and have a subdirectory config with files in there and API with files, because it'll transform this whole JavaScript directory to a hash map. So it doesn't really care whether you use files with objects in them or just folders with files. It doesn't care. And that's because in main.js, where all the magic happens, I guess, it just loads all these files and transforms them to a hash map, and then passes that in main dev to the front-end framework. And then in prod, the only thing that's different between the two is that they set env to a different value. And the framework knows how to deal with this env property. Okay, so that's about it, I think. Lib is just for your use for the implementation. It's not significant to the framework. Tags you should remember from Vue. So yeah, there's nothing really new about this thing. It's just gluing all the other modules together in I think a way that looks kind of nice. So let's take a look at what this does. Let's take a look at the routes, and this is what it does. So that should be changed like this, sorry. Right. By default, there is one controller provided for the with the framework. Normally, you'd have 0 controllers provided, but you get one. It's the model controller, and what this one does is it gets either a list or just one model if you specify the model here, and if there's an ID in the route. In that case, it can get one. It doesn't need an ID for all of them, obviously. Writing your own controller. Everything still works the same as in the router, obviously, because it just implements it here. So let's take a look at these routes. So let's start with users. It's secured with a policy, so we're not going to get there. It should redirect us to this page, and we should never get to see any of this. So we should get to this details page for user 56. Okay, let's start. Now the starting is going to take some time because I'm still developing. I have this temporary task where it will actually reinstall my node modules. So yeah, not all of them, just the ones I'm developing. Right, okay, so let's go to the browser, and let's start at what's it called? Users, I think. This should redirect us to user/56. I'll just remove all breakpoints. Right, so it did. And we see ABC on the page. If you look at network, it got this user 56, and its first name is ABC. let's take a look at the tag used. I think it's this one, Yeah, it just gets the model and shows first name. So really all we did to make that happen was write this tag. Opt is just riot. Model is because we're using the model controller, and if we are using that, the details method, it'll give us a model, and if we're using the list method, we'll get a collection. As we can, oh no, I didn't. That should be fixed. We can't access that view anyway though, because of the policies. Right, so the only thing we had to do was write this tag. Then in the views, we had to write this view, which is, pretty simple. And then in the routes, so the config routes, we had to add this route. So referring to this model controller details, which will give us a model. In this tag here, we're setting that model to the template context. And okay, it knows it's the user model because of this. And we're specifying the test view here, so that references this tag. So that's the way it's all glued together, like tied together. But yeah, setting it up is pretty straightforward, I think. Also, I like the fact that for different environments, you can have different configs, and for different devices. I think that's really cool. Like you're not gonna need to be hacky. You could just override stuff, or just give a completely different implementation for mobile, or do whatever. So I think that's it. Yes, I think so. If we look at the app, this is the app global. This is the only global there is, and it contains the models. It works like I showed you before. So user, server, find all, for example. Right, it contains, let's see, right, translator I haven't showed you. So translate general, yes. And if I set this to, oh, right, so that works also. You can execute policies from here, so always deny, right? That's alright because it rejected, and always allow will resolve. So those are available as well. Yeah. Oh yeah, the router. You can access the router like this, and there's two methods that's interesting, I guess. Though you should already know it's in a router module video. So navigate/users. It'll just redirect me back because I'm not allowed to go there. But if I go user 67, I'll get to this user, and I'll have a different model. One for 67. Right. Yeah, that's it.